Welcome to episode 5 of Fourth and Inches. I'm your host, Nate Smith, alongside Christian Egerbidi and Jordan D'Souza. Another rowdy weekend of NFL football. It was absolutely insane, just like it always is. But first, as always, let's discuss the weekends. How about it, Craig?
Well, this weekend was awesome. Got to go home for my little fall break, back to Southern California, see the boys, and maybe a few females also, but mostly the boys. Also, Tommy Terrific made his return this weekend. Was absolutely pumped about that. He balled out on the Browns and got my ticket case dismissed out of court. So, overall, successful weekend. What about you, Jordan?
Same over here. I mean, I didn't get to go home like you two gentlemen, but I just stayed here. Very relaxing weekend. Watched a lot of Netflix. Ripped through season 3 of The Office in like 2 days. Then started on this new show called Westworld, which Christian and I have fallen in love with. Highly recommend on HBO Go. It's blowing my mind after each episode. There's only been 2 episodes, so it's not too late to catch up, but definitely highly recommend that show.
They keep trying to get me to watch it. Maybe I'll cave in. We'll see. I also had a very solid weekend. Went home to California. Me and Christian are from the same town, Newbury Park. Shout out to 805. Drove over there westward with the lady friend. Spent, I think, 3 days, 4 nights. Wait, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't add up. 4 nights, 5 days. 3 nights, 4 days. One of those. I don't know. Anyways, saw some high school football, reunited with a few of the bros, was a very, very good time. Had some home-cooked food, which, honestly was a big plus. Living as a grown adult now at 19 years young, cooking can be a chore, and sometimes you just don't want to do it, and so nothing like leaning on mom to provide some good food. So there was that.
I actually had a little mishap while cooking today. I was making myself some pasta al dente. I'm not really sure what al dente means. I just saw it on the box. But anyway, I was making pasta today, and I was boiling the water. The water was boiling, and I was pouring the pasta from out of the box into the pot, and I had a sneeze attack. I think I had like 3 sneezes in a row, and while that was happening, some of the pasta actually slipped under the pot and into the stove and caught on fire. So I see a fire maybe about a foot high, maybe not a foot high, but still it was pretty high. I was very rattled. So I turn off the stove heroically. I open all the windows so the smoke doesn't cluster our room. And likewise, I think Ted Smith would be very proud of how I handled the situation. Nate, can you comment on that?
Well, keep in mind during this episode, I was actually at work. For those of you that don't know, I'm a loyal employee to Chick-fil-A on campus here at ASU. Anyways, it was pretty dead at this point in the restaurant, so I'm over in the corner just checking my messages. All of a sudden, I see we just had an apartment fire from Jordan D'Souza. Obviously, my natural reaction is I'm just a little bit concerned. Once I got home, he explained how the pasta accidentally fell into the stove, and there was actual flames that he could see. Thankfully, our smoke detector was actually unplugged at the moment because I'm pretty sure the entire apartment complex would have been evacuated. However, we did avoid disaster, and so I'm proud of Jordan for not burning down the entire place, but try not to draw pasta into the stove next time.
It's actually funny that you mentioned the smoke alarm at this point, and why it was unplugged is because right after Nate had left for fall break, so maybe 4 days ago, I set the smoke alarm off when I was making a quesadilla and forgot to turn the stove off. So this is like the second time in less than a week that I've had a little scare with fire. So let's just hope I can right the ship on this one and have a good end of the semester.
I think what this comes down to is maybe we need to put Jordan on some kind of timeout because obviously he's not exactly Guy Fieri in the kitchen. We've been having quite the mishaps here, so let's pray for our fire safety here at Roosevelt Point. Enough shenanigans. Let's get down to business. Rolling right into the rapid recap. Here we go. Thursday night football. Interesting game? Not really. Cardinals right the ship, 33-21 victory over the struggling 49ers. Blaine Gabbert continues to be bad. Earlier this week, we found out he will be benched for Colin Kaepernick this upcoming week. David Johnson, 27 carries, 157 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Roll, David, roll. Patriots at Browns, 33-13 win for the Pats in the return of Tommy Terrific. Brady, outstanding game, 28 for 40, 406 yards, 3 touchdowns. All to Martellus Bennett, unfortunately, for my fantasy team. Chugging along. Bears at Colts. Sleeper. Colts win, 29-23. Brian Hoyer with a surprisingly awesome day. 397 yards and 2 touchdowns. Don't think Jay's coming back anytime soon. T.Y. Hilton, the bright spot for the Colts, 171 yards and a score. Titans at Dolphins. Titans win this one by a score of 30-17. Tannehill continues to struggle. 191 yards, 2 picks. Miami needs a quarterback. DeMarco Murray continues his impressive start to the season with 121 yards on the ground. Skins at Ravens. Skins win another one, 16-10. The Redskins are getting hot. They've won 3 in a row. Cousins had an average day, 260 yards in the air, 1 touchdown. For Baltimore, Terrence West was a bright spot, 11 carries, 95 yards out of the backfield. Texans at Vikings. The Purple People Eaters continued their dominance with a 31-13 shellacking of the Houston Texans. Bradford, 271 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns. He continues to be efficient. Wide receiver Adam Thielen might be a little emerging star. 127 yards and 1 touchdown. Jets at the Steelers. The Steel Curtain wins this one comfortably, 31-13. However, the game was close throughout. The score is a little deceptive. The Steelers did pull away in the fourth quarter. The Jets fall to 1-4. Not good. Todd Bowles and the Jets in some trouble. Big Ben, great game. 380 yards in the air, 4 touchdowns. Second-year man out of Auburn, Sammy Coates, had himself quite the day. 139 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. Bills at Rams. Bills win 30-19. Don't look now, but Bills Mafia is hot. That'll be the 3rd win in a row. Rex knows how to rally the troops. LaShawn McCoy runs wild. 18 carries, 150 yards. And to cap it all off, we had Monday Night Football. Buccaneers at the Panthers in the ugliest game I've seen so far this year. No Cam Newton due to concussion. Roberto Aguayo sucks. 3 for 5, 2 missed field goals. Did hit the game winner. Overall, Buccaneers wasted a second-round draft pick. The first game on our in-depth slate, we always pick 5 of the best games of the week. We had Cincinnati Bengals at the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys won this one by a score of 28-14, but really this game was not close. Dallas dominated the entire game and led 28-0 after the third quarter. Guys, what do we make of this one?
Well, I mean, Nate, your Cowboys look good. Dak Prescott, threw a touchdown in this game. Still controlling the offense, not turning the ball over, doing a really good job getting them down the field. And then Ezekiel Elliott, God, what a beast this dude is. 134 rush yards, 2 touchdowns. He's been one of the leading rushers so far this year and is just pretty much carrying the offense on his back. It all runs through him. That's what sets up the play-action pass for Dak and gives Dak a little more time back there in the pocket. So Ezekiel Elliott, huge performance again in this game. And the Cowboys defense did what they needed to do against this Bengals offense that just looked stagnant pretty much the whole game.
Yeah, it's got to echo what Christian say. I mean, the Cowboys just look good. I mean, no matter how good you say they are, at this point they're 4-1. There's a lot of teams in the NFL that wish they were 4-1 right now. And I think if they want to keep up the success, they're going to have to lean heavily on their offense and Dak Prescott. But Nate, a question for you. Come week 8, Tony Romo's healthy. Let's say Cowboys 5-2, maybe. Do you think the Cowboys should stay with Dak Prescott or go with Tony Romo, and why?
You know, I've been thinking about this a lot in recent weeks. It's been a very hot topic throughout the media. media loves this kind of thing, quarterback controversy, whatnot. I can see where some people would have a tough time making a decision, but for me, I think it's a relatively simple one. I think you got to give it back to Romo with very few questions asked. Yes, I understand they're 4-1. Yes, I understand they're rolling. But, I mean, you take a deeper look at the numbers. I mean, Dak's been throwing for around 200 yards a game, which is, like, pretty average, if not less than average for an NFL quarterback. Yes, he has no picks, but the big play threat that we had in 2014 when we went 12-4 and Romo had an MVP-type year, it's just obviously not there. I mean, I understand Dez has been hurt for the past few games, and that hurts the passing attack. But, I mean, Dak isn't, at least not yet, isn't really a guy that's going to open up the offense, take the top off the defense, and just really respect the deep ball. And I think Romo gives us that extra dynamic bit that we need on the offensive side to really, truly be a threat. Even though I can't complain about the offense at all. Like, we've been really good so far. And obviously, Dak Prescott is a huge improvement for our backups last year, such as Matt Castle. But to answer your question, yes, I do think you got to give it back to Romo when he's healthy.
So on the other side, we have the Cincinnati Bengals falling to 2-3. I think we all expected a lot more from the Bengals, but honestly, like, how good are the Bengals? I really don't think they're that good. They're one of those, like, classic AFC teams that are, like, good during the regular season, but everyone knows they have, like, no shot of doing anything in the playoffs. I mean, they're a team kind of like the Texans or the Chiefs, or maybe even the Colts, just teams that are, like, have a good regular season, and we're like, wow, you got to watch out for them in the playoffs, and then just get, like, blown out in the first or second round.
Yeah, the Bengals are just such a weird team. I mean, Andy Dalton looked last year as if he was progressing into, maybe a top-tier quarterback.
He was in, like, MVP conversations for the beginning of
he definitely was because, I mean, the Bengals had a great record. They went 12-4, so he's kind of regressing now this year, and they're 2-3. So it's tough. They're in a tough division. They got the Steelers and the Ravens in that division. So that's two pretty good teams you got to compete with. But, I mean, I just think it's going to be hard for them to make the playoffs right now with how they're playing, just because the Steelers are hot. Even the Ravens are playing very well so far this year. So I think it's going to be tough for them to eke out a playoff spot. But, yeah, it's just tough to see Andy Dalton. After last year, you thought he was going to kind of elevate himself into a top tier of a quarterback, but he just looks like he's kind of regressed so far.
Cincinnati Bengals need to part ways with Marvin Lewis. He's been the coach for 14 years. They've won 0 playoff games. 0. Zilch. They've appeared 7 times, won none of those games. Off to a rocky start here in 2016. I just think after a decade, if you're not continuously moving upward, I think that's about the cap I give. That might even be too long. Maybe like 7 or 8 years for a coach if your team remains somewhat the same. You're not winning playoff games. You're not taking steps forward. I really don't understand what Cincinnati management is thinking. They've been stagnant for the past few years, and now this year they appear to be going downhill. So, among other issues, I think Marvin Lewis is definitely on the hot seat, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the boot at the end of this year. For the second game of our in-depth analysis, we head to Detroit. Eagles at Detroit Lions. This one turned out to be a bit of a nail-biter, but the Lions pulled out at home by a score of 24-23. Carson Wentz, not his best game, 238 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick at the end of the game. Matt Stafford, very efficient day. Did not throw for a lot of yards, but ended up with 3 touchdowns. I'll start with Jordan on this one. Eagles took their first loss of the season. What were the issues here in this one?
I think there was a multitude of issues, just a lot of things that kind of culminated up to their first loss. But offensively, I think Wentz had, honestly, one of his better games for even throwing his first pick at the end, which is kind of, granted, there was a minute left. He kind of just chucked it up there. But Wentz had one of his better games. The offense struggled to move the ball in the first half. But other than that, the Eagles played a fairly well game offensively. I just think the one thing that's kind of been their Achilles heel, or is going to be their Achilles heel throughout the season, is their lack of talent at the skill position, like explosive players at the running back and wide receiver position. And if you watch the games like in depth, excuse me, you'll see Carson Wentz doing a lot of passes to the sideline, short intermediate routes. And I definitely think the Eagles want to be able to throw it down the field, but they don't have the talent at this point where a wide receiver like Aguilar can go run down 10 yards, create enough separation for a nice little pass down the field. They don't really have the talent at that point to run plays like that consistently. And I think once they get some skill position receivers, that'll help greatly. On the defensive side of the ball, the first half, I don't even know what happened. I mean, the Lions had 3 possessions, scored every time, scored 21 points in the first half. I mean, but then in the second half, they only gave up 3 points, one resulting in a fumble where they got pretty great field position, which set the Lions up for 3. Other than that, defense played well in the second half. Run defense continued to astound me. But I think in the bigger picture, the Eagles have a lot of talent at very important positions like defensive line, excuse me, and their secondary and their quarterback. But I think that their lack of true talent at the skill position, which is a must in the NFL, is really going to end up hurting them at the end.
Yeah, well, me and Jordan were talking about this, I think, at some point last week. The Eagles were 3-0. They had just beaten Pittsburgh. And then Jordan was lamenting to me how he was a little upset that they had to go and take a bye week just because they had been so hot. You know, going 3-0, beating a great team like Pittsburgh, you kind of just want to keep that hot streak going and just play the next week and not have to take a week off to kind of, you know, slow your roll in a bye week. So I think there's a little bit of that here. They took the week off, then came back and kind of started really slow in this game, going down early to the Lions. And then as the game went on, obviously they turned it on, only allowed 3 points in the second half. So I think that was a big thing, was the Eagles, you know, because after a win versus Pittsburgh, you expect, you know, the Lions to kind of be like a gimme game where you can come out and dominate them. But I think they actually were hurt by having that week off. It kind of slowed their fire. But overall, I think they'll be just fine. Carson Wentz is doing a great job. That pick at the end was kind of just a desperation to try to get him down the field. But other than that, he played a very good game, very efficient game. So I think he's going to continue to do well for them, and I think they're going to keep winning games. But it just kind of sucks when you come into a game like this against the Lions. This is kind of one of those that you should win. And anytime you drop one of these, it kind of hurts. So,
yeah, I think the Lions are one of those interesting teams that can play well any given game. I mean, they do have talent. You know, Stafford's a gunslinger. He can chuck it around the yard. You know, they were on fire in that first half, held to 3 points in the second half. I don't really think the Eagles played that bad. I just think the Lions actually played pretty well this game, and it was just unfortunate timing. Coming off the bye week for the Eagles, you know, probably lost a little bit of their rhythm, as was mentioned before. But you know, the Eagles, we'll see. They got a couple tough division games coming up with the Redskins and Cowboys within the next few weeks, and I think they play the Vikings soon also. So Eagles have a tough schedule coming up, so we'll see how they respond to this loss against the Lions. Game 3 of our in-depth analysis is the Atlanta Falcons at the Denver Broncos. Falcons might be for real. Denver drops their first game of the season. Falcons win this one by a score of 23-16, but it really wasn't that close. The Falcons dominated pretty much the whole game. Matt Ryan, pretty good day considering the defense he was facing. 267 yards with 1 touchdown, no picks. Paxton Lynch had to start for Denver because of the Simeon injury. Not so good for him. 223 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Guys, the Falcons have put up points against everyone they've played this season. Are they for real?
You know, I actually am going to say I think the Falcons are for real this year. I think Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman in that backfield, the way they complement each other, is really, really a great fit for the Falcons. I mean, Tevin Coleman had 132 receiving yards. That's receiving out of the backfield, which is awesome, and a touchdown for him. And then I think Devonta Freeman had, 80 yards on the ground? 88 yards and a touchdown on the ground. So That little 1-2 punch they have going on is definitely awesome. Matt Ryan's been playing lights out so far, and we know what Julio can do on the outside. So I think they definitely are for real. That and the fact that they've played some pretty good teams. The Broncos played the Panthers, so it's not like they're playing chumps so far. And not only did they beat this Broncos team, but they absolutely dominated them. We're up 20-3 at one point. Sacked Paxton Lynch 6 times. He had a QBR of 11.7. I believe that's on an 100-point scale, so 11.7 is not too good. So the Atlanta defense playing really well, holding them to only 16 points. I definitely believe in the Falcons. I think they're going to win the NFC South and nab one of the top playoff spots.
I'm going to have to disagree with both of you guys. I don't think the Falcons are as good as we think they are. I don't really have any real statistical reasons to back this up right now. I mean, they've done everything to prove me wrong. I just think that they do this every year. Every year they start off hot and then just end up disappointing us. I mean, last year, what were they, 6? They were 6-0 last year. How many games did they win? 9? 8? Okay. Yeah, I mean, they just end up doing this every year. They'll start off hot. Everyone's saying this is the year of Falcons, Matt Ryan, Devontae Freeman, new head coach. I don't know. I don't really have much of a reason to back up what I'm saying other than I'm just kind of going with my gut on this one. I think everyone has to go with their gut at some point in their life, and this is the moment in my life that I'm choosing to go with my gut.
Kind of pushing it all in here, 100.
Weak analysis by D'Souza. I think I would agree with Christian on this one. The Falcon, Matt Ryan has just been on fire, and Christian already mentioned it, but the Coleman-Freeman 1-2 punch has proved very tough to stop, even for the best defense in the league in Denver. I mean, when you have a guy you can line up in the slot or come out of the backfield like Tevin Coleman, that's just really hard to game plan for. Get a lot of bad matchups with linebackers covering him, and he's going to win that speed matchup almost every single time. So we'll see. Jordan might be right. They did start off hot last year, so we will pay attention closely to Atlanta the next few games and see what they do with this 4-1 start. We also have another 4-1 team. This one in the AFC, the Oakland Raiders. Really surprising people. We thought they would be kind of good. I mean, they made a lot of offseason acquisitions, especially on the defensive end. Derek Carr has been promising, progressing each year. But after this week, a 34-31 win over the Chargers, the Raiders improved to 4-1. Derek Carr, another great day, 317 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. They've kind of been going rushing by committee. They had about 4 different guys get carries. Amari Cooper, stud on the outside, 6 receptions, 138 yards, 1 touchdown. Guys, I guess I'll ask the same question I did with the Falcons. Do we believe in Oakland?
I'm kind of going to hesitate a little bit to believe in Oakland. I certainly believe in them. I think they're going to make a run for that wild card spot. But I just don't know yet. These matchups, these divisional matchups they're going to have against the Broncos later in the season. I'm really excited to see how they do in those games. But I think once they get into those tougher games, then we'll be able to gauge kind of where they're at. Because so far, playing teams like the Saints and the Chargers and whatnot, these are games that if you want to be a playoff team, you should be winning these games. So kind of seeing them win these games is not as impressive to me so far. But it is the Raiders we're talking about. So to see them win games at all is kind of a good thing. So 4-1 is awesome for the Raiders. They've been kind of eking out these tough wins, which is a good character builder for the team. And Jack Del Rio, I mean, we know the size of his balls. So, basically, I think the Raiders are a team to look out for. I think they'll fight for that wild card spot out of the AFC West. But I'm just not totally convinced they can really challenge the Broncos for the division quite yet. But they certainly are playing good enough where they have to be in that conversation. So
I'm definitely convinced that the Raiders are good in kind of retrospect and just kind of what they've done in the past. So if you put this in perspective, what they've done in the past has been very dismal. Haven't won a lot of games. and I'm definitely going to be invested into what they're going to be doing in the future. They've shown signs of progression, and they've really shown no signs of them degressing in the future. So they have a young quarterback, young receiver, young defense. Excuse me. Khalil Mack is an absolute beast. So everything's going to be looking up for the Raiders in the future. And then on the other side of the ball, you just got to feel bad for Phillip Rivers at this point. I mean, he's been on disappointing Charger team. Excuse me. After disappointing Charger team. I mean, usually the Chargers will like squeak out a few wins early in the season and then start to disappoint, but now they're 1-4. So I think it's safe to say they're in mid-season form at this point. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no doubt. They're already losing games and giving up leads, so that's pure Charger football.
Yeah, I definitely think Mike McCoy is trying to get himself fired at this point. I can't imagine being the Chargers head coach. It'd be much fun.
Yeah, definitely another rough one for San Diego fans. Had a chance to tie the game late, fumbled the field goal snap. I mean, stuff only the Chargers can pull. But yes, the future of Oakland, even the present for Oakland, does look promising. They do have a very young core, as was mentioned. But they do have a very tough division, which was also talked about. You know, they got to play the Chiefs and the Broncos twice this year, both in their division. Those are tough games every time. So we will see what they can do. Off to a hot start. We'll see if they can maintain. And for the final game of our in-depth analysis, we'll go to Sunday night. The New York Giants took on the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau. Packers took this one 23-16, but by no means was it convincing. Aaron Rodgers with a dismal performance by his standards. 259 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, QBR of 69.4. Guys, we've seen the Packer offense be up and down so far this season. Aaron Rodgers, aside from his performance against the Lions, hasn't been very good. What's up with Aaron?
You know, me, myself, I've always respected Aaron Rodgers and enjoyed watching him from afar, but never been much of a fan just because some ignorant people in the world like to compare him to my boy Tommy. So, you know, never the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan. So sometimes when he puts out performances like this, I kind of smirk to myself. But, yeah, so far, coming into this year, everyone kind of thought Aaron Rodgers was going to be, you know, up there as an MVP candidate. And so far, it's not like he's been horrible. He's been pretty serviceable. But just by his standards, it just hasn't been, you know, what you can expect out of Aaron Rodgers, who is an MVP quarterback, who is elite by all means of the word. So in this game, I just think, you know, Janoris Jenkins had 2 picks in this game. He's just one of the young cornerbacks that I love watching so far this year. He's been all over the place, whether it's blocking field goals, making interceptions. He's just so exciting to watch. And he picked off Aaron Rodgers 2 times and at least kept the Giants in this game to the point where they had a chance to win. But overall, I just think Green Bay is the better team, and they showed it by eking out a win against the Giants.
Yeah, I'm going to have to echo what you're saying. I honestly have no idea what's going on with Rodgers at this point. I mean, if you were to watch the Giants game, the dude has all the time in the world. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he's just having such a subpar game, throws 2 picks. And they were running the ball pretty well. I'm pretty sure Lacey had around like 70 or 80 yards rushing. So it's not like that was a problem for them. And he's got his targets back. He's got Jordy. He's got Randall. Devontae Adams has played great this year. And honestly, I just really can't put my finger on what was wrong with Rodgers, specifically this game. But I think he's just kind of gotten off to a slow start. He still has 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Still a good year by any quarterback standards. Maybe not his standards that he holds himself to. And I think eventually he's going to end up turning on later in the year. I think the Packers tend to do that. They'll get off to these slow starts, and then they'll really pick it up once the playoffs come around. But other than that, I think that Rodgers definitely has some figuring out to do earlier in the year. And then on the other side of the ball, like you said, Janoris Jenkins is just an absolute beast. He's the only guy on that Giants defense that can play football. Maybe Pierre-Paul, if he had some extra fingers, he'd be a little bit better. I don't know. But anyway, And then on the offensive side of the ball for the Giants, Odell Beckham, everyone was kind of looking at him to see what he was going to be doing this game. He did end up scoring a touchdown. It looked like he was having fun. So I guess we have Odell back. I mean, he had 50 yards and a touchdown. Definitely not as good as we expected Odell to play in this game. But, hey, it looked like he was having fun out there.
Well, I just want to point out, Odell Beckham Jr. had a .1 quarterback rating on a scale of 1 to 100. So safe to say that Odell Beckham has been the worst quarterback in the league so far this year. Dropped back once, was sacked once. That's not efficient at all. That's not helping out your team. So
Looks like he just can't do anything right at this point.
it looks like Odell's being a little selfish to my eye.
Yeah, I have a couple theories on why Aaron's been bad this year. First theory, he's been in the league a while. It is possible, even though he's extremely talented, that maybe defenses are starting to figure him out a little bit. Maybe everyone in the league is starting to get a little bit of a read on him, and maybe defenses are starting to take away his tendencies, take away what he's good at. That's one of my theories. A second theory is maybe he's ad-libbing too much. You know, he's always praised for his mobility, his pocket awareness, his ability to escape pressure. But maybe that's actually working to his disadvantage because, in my eyes, Mike McCarthy is one of the best play callers in the league. And, you know, oftentimes you see Rodgers progress through his reads and, you know, start dancing around in the pocket, buy extra time. And, yes, that works sometimes, but sometimes that plays into the advantage of the defense because the receivers get confused. You know, once they run their set routes and they're just running around trying to get open, you can have guys clustered in similar areas. So we'll see. I mean, what's alarming for Packer fans is this past Sunday against the Giants was the first time this entire year that Rodgers has thrown for over 250 yards. We're talking about a guy who has over 33,000 yards in his career. You know, constantly known for 300-yard games are the norm for him, and he hasn't eclipsed the 300-yard mark one time this year. I think that's definitely a bit of a red flag. Obviously, the Packers are still fine. They've won 3 games. They're 3-1. But we'll see. You know, we'll see. It could be interesting. But I think Aaron will probably figure it out. You know, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league for a reason. Now time for a fan favorite segment, Fantasy Heroes of Week 5. My fantasy team actually took its first loss of the season. We dropped to 4-1. It's okay, though. We'll rebound this week. Not worried. But my fantasy stud of the week, or hero, whatever adjective you want to use, has got to be Mr. David Johnson. No, Sir David Johnson. 27 carries, 157 yards on the ground. Found the end zone twice for a total of 29 fantasy points. With the struggling Cardinals offense and Carson Palmer not playing, huge performance by my man DJ. So thank you, David. You're a beast.
All right, everyone. This is Cree here. This week, my Brady Boys squad in fantasy had their golden boy return. That's right. Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. Yes, the man returned at Cleveland this week to the tune of 28 of 40, completed 70% of his passes, 406 yards, threw for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, not to mention 2 rushes for 14 yards. The man, Tom Brady, put up 29.4 points and led the Brady Boys to victory. What a return for the GOAT himself.
And sticking with quarterbacks here, my fantasy hero of the week has to go to Ben Roethlisberger. Put up 380 yards, 4 touchdowns, got me 29 fantasy points. In a game we did lose by around 50 points. I mean, it was a rout, but hey, at least Ben was that one silver lining of the team.
On the other side of the spectrum, we have fantasy duds of Week 5. For me, I had a few options to pick from. I had 3 players combined for 8 points, so that's never good. But I decided to go with Lamar Miller. Been pretty consistent. this season so far as far as fantasy points score. He's averaged about 10. But this past week was no bueno. Against Minnesota, he carried the ball 8 times for 20 yards. 20. Whopping total of 2 fantasy points. Lamar. I understand the Vikings are good, but come on, man. Not good enough. Looking for a better performance out of Lamar next week against a subpar Indianapolis defense. Cray, who was your dud?
Well, Nate, on my other fantasy team, Belichick's Bombers, Jeremy Hill of the Cincinnati Bengals had a few good games in a row. Big game against Denver, putting up over 20 points. Thought I'd throw him in the lineup against Dallas, expecting a big game. 4 carries, 12 yards for my boy Jeremy Hill. What's up with that? 4 carries in a full-length football game is not acceptable at all for my running back too. And only 12 yards on those carries. He gave me a 1.2 point total, which was not enough to get Belichick's Bombers the win. So I'm putting this one on you, Jeremy. What's up, dude?
My fantasy dud, I'm actually going to switch it up. I'm going to go fantasy duds because I have multiple duds in the team that lost by 50 points. My fantasy duds of the week are just going to be my wide receivers in general. They combined for a total of 11 points between all 3 of them. Will Fuller was the cream of the crop, had a whopping 0 points, 1 reception, 4 yards. Julio Jones, 2 points. Jordy Nelson, 9 points. Julio and Jordy, those are my first 2-round picks right there. I'm not even angry at this point. I'm just kind of upset because I just know how much better they could be. We all do, and they just don't. I mean, like Julio Jones had like 555 million yards last week. And then he had 29 this week, so just a big disappointment. So safe to say I'm upset.
You know we like to get creative with our last segment of the episode. Also a somber time because it means the episode's drawing to a close. But this week we have a new segment entitled Guy You Would Least Likely Want to Get in a Fight With, who is in the NFL in some capacity. My pick for this one, after days of thinking, has to be Vontaze Burfict. This man is an animal. Linebacker for the Cincinnati Bengals. Not only destroys people on the field, almost broke Antonio Brown's neck in the playoffs last year, just known for headhunting and brutal hits. But I read recently in a report that he grew up in a gang and has been involved with multiple gun altercations. So he is not a man that I would want to encounter in any form outside of the football field. Cray, who's your pick?
Well, Nathaniel, my pick is actually a good friend of mine. Met him a few months ago back in Thousand Oaks, California. That's Von Miller. Yes, the Super Bowl MVP. The situation that I met him in was a much better situation than if we were to get in a fight, which is part of why I picked Von Miller, because I had just parked my 1999 Chrysler 300M, all black, 36-inch rims, air conditioning. Enough about that luxury vehicle. Von Miller pulls up next to me in his Maserati and parks it directly next to my car. Now, my first reaction is, come on, dude, this isn't a competition. You can't hang with the Chrysler. What are you doing? But then I see this hulking figure get out of the car, looks about 6'3", 250. Okay, and I'm saying, uh-oh, like I parked next to the wrong dude. But then he turns around and I see his trademark little rimmed glasses, and I'm like, it's lovable Von Miller. I walk up and take a selfie. But if this situation had gone down in like a dark alleyway and he had been aggressive towards me, definitely don't want to get in the way of Von Miller when he's angry or when he, I assume, is hungry. Both dangerous propositions. So yeah, Von Miller, don't fight me.
So I'm going to go the coach's route on this one. I was originally going to go with Doug Peterson for various reasons, but I'm going to kind of change gears on that one. I'm going to go with ex-coach Herm Edwards. I mean, he's like skinny old guy. I mean, he definitely would beat me up. Maybe not by that much, but yeah, he would definitely beat me in a fight. It's not that. he would like emotionally abuse me. I just feel like he's very like sassy and witty, and he would just say things that would really just kind of like pluck at my heartstrings. That would just make me feel really bad about myself. So on top of like the physical beating I would receive, the emotional beating would be 10 times worse. So that's a guy I would not like to fight.
Well, as always, we had fun. We hope you had fun. I'm Nate Smith.
I'm Cree.
And I'm Jordan.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of 4th and Inches.